Good evening, Avram.
Hello.
How are you?
All right. Just trying to find something, but I guess I'll find it later. I was gonna want to show on the air something that's not, it's kind of eluding. So I had the disk here, the flash drive here, and it must be underneath something. So I can't find it. Unless I really move on. So what I was gonna do, maybe I should just do it. This is put is reset um, is show on air exactly what happens when we take exactly what happens when we take stuff that where's this coming to? Okay. When we try to reset a computer and we don't have and we don't delete it. So
Okay.
I guess and we don't actually. Yeah. So I have to use this on here. But anyway, what I would do, this won't take too long, I think, is let's say, okay. Take a bunch of things, put them on this disk, put this into the other thing. Case. Really? Oh, I'm sorry. All right, never mind.
You're fine.
So you I know what's going on with this. I'm missing a disk. I'm missing a drive that should be doing something. All right, take this one maybe. So what I wanted to show. So anyway, I just put up an article today about how to secure delete your drive, right? And what I wanted to do was actually show the audience like how resetting your computer doesn't actually delete stuff.
Right.
Right. Now, of course, of course, it could, of course, go wrong, but
Sure.
There's always the possibility that it doesn't go wrong. So I don't know. I was just thinking of that because that would be interesting to show someone.
Sounds good.
All right. You know what? Let's do this. Now, what we would need to do, though, something we don't normally not do, which is show. This process takes a while, so I guess I would show starting to erase it starting to do a disk reset at the beginning of our show, and then by the time we get through the first segment, then it may have been reset already. If that's cool.
So do we want to do the Piltch point in two parts?
Yeah, I guess. I just would say, hey, here we're gonna start doing this. Give it a few minutes, and then come back, and you'll see that you probably can still get these files back.
Okay.
Right. Anyway.
So,
Although I say that in this computer, yeah. Anyway,
uh-oh. And this computer what?
nothing. So I fixed the
Okay.
problem last week, by the way. I
Okay.
don't think I ever got to tell you what happened, but
What it was.
the what it was. So it was a power supply extension cable.
Ah. Okay.
So the power supply extension uh, cable in my I can't really take the webcam down to a level to show this right now.
That's okay.
But the power supply extension in my computer, of course, now Windows on the computer that I'm wiping wants to update itself, so it's sitting around. Um, but it was a little loose. I thought it was tight, but apparently not tight enough. So it was periodically turning itself off, even though it was still in. It was, I don't know, I guess not in enough. So once
Gotcha.
I talked to my coworker Paul about it, he said he could see daylight between the two plugs or something, and that was
it.
And for that reason, so I had to unplug and replug something, and it has been okay since then.
Excellent. Glad to hear it. Okay. So do we want to do? Do you want to do just the I'm going to start this now in the beginning, and then do the actual intro to what you're doing, and then I can pull that bit into the story for the individual publish?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'll just talk about. Yep.
Okay. Perfect. So I will just be ready to switch to the Piltch points frame early so I can edit it in later. But perfect. All right. You tell me when you're ready.
Okay. So the other thing is, let me see if this works well.
Okay.
The best way to show this. So I have my this second computer here that I'm wiping, and I've connected it to my first computer using a capture card and OBS.
Oh, okay.
So the best way what would I do? Start virtual camera? Is that how I could actually use this as a camera?
Yep.
So let me just make sure that you can actually see this. So if I go,
you can swap to it
here. If I do OBS virtual camera, does that...
Beautiful.
Are you seeing the whole screen? It looks like you're not seeing the whole screen.
If I cut over to that frame.
Oh, okay. Got it. Got it. Cool. Okay.
This one for the cameras is cropped a little bit, but I think even the Piltch point frame is, everything except a half a taskbar. So.
Okay. Cool. Well, it's the left side, so you might.
I'll use the full frame.
I can move it around.
I tend to use the full frame when we're doing screen share, unless you're like scrolling a website or something and the taskbar doesn't matter. But otherwise, I use the full frame when I can.
Cool. Okay.
All right. Uh-oh. Well, it's apparently an HTML error in one of our articles that I did not catch earlier. So, oops. Have to do that after the show. All right. Let me get everything set here. I'll hit recording. And here we go. This week, TikTok's tracking your keyboard, Sega's giving you all new games, Google search is limiting clickbait, and Cinework... Hold on. We'll try that again, because I don't think that's the name of this company. All right. I apologize for those of you who are watching live. Yeah, I don't think that's the name of the company. It's... Yeah, I've definitely got the name of the company wrong. All right, let's try this again. Don't you hate it when you start typing and you get it wrong on something that actually matters? Here we go again. This week, TikTok's tracking your keyboard, Sega's giving you all new games, Google Search is limiting clickbait, and Cineworks is filing bankruptcy. It's Sunday, August 21st, 2022, and this is episode 630 of F5 Live, Refreshing Technology, a proud part of the Tech Podcast Network. If it's tech, it's here. Wherever you are and however you're accessing our show, whether it be on social media like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or Snapchat, through a podcatcher like Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or a myriad of other options, through our live stream platforms like livestream.com, Twitch, or YouTube, where you can become a member and get exclusive content and ad-free episodes of F5 Live and the Piltch Point, or on our website, PLUGHITZlive.com. Thank you for making us a part of your day. There are two ways that you can do that. The first is Sunday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern. You can go to f5live.tv/join us. There you can chat with us in the studio, give us your feedback on the topics as we talk about them, or watch as we screw up the intro. If you can't join us live, that's okay. You can always go to PLUGHITZlive.com/subscribe. There you'll see all of our shows and all of the ways that you can watch, listen, and follow along. It's been one of those nights tonight, Avram, and I apologize to the listeners and viewers for that. This is my second show in a row, so my brain's a little off, but it's good to have you back, because last week it was one of those weeks for you.
Yes. Sorry about that. It was like a curse. I mean, I had just built this new computer, which I really wish I could. I don't think the cord is long enough in the camera to show this, but I'll show you the inside of it because it looks pretty cool. Like I've got all these RGB lights in there. And in order to make this computer work, to work properly, I had to use some power supply extension cables. So one of the coolest things around is that I have these PSU extension cables called the Lian Li Strimer. Perhaps people might pronounce it as streamer, but I pronounce it as Strimer, Strimer. And it is extension cables for the 24-pin ATX and the 6 to 8-pin GPU cables, power cables. And since this case I have is pretty big, I really could use those extensions. Plus, they're RGB extension cables, so you get RGB on the cable, which is cool. But
sure,
all was working well for a few days, and then mysteriously, right before we tried to do our show, I got the computer randomly turning itself off. And then I thought, okay, that's just a fluke. And I tried it again, and it randomly turned itself off again. And then the turning itself off happened faster and faster. And then I opened up my computer and I tried I thought maybe it was the cables. So I tried pushing them a little bit, and things seemed to work okay. This was after 2 hours of trying. Things seemed to work okay again for almost 24 hours. And I thought, oh, okay, I solved this problem. But then around 4 o'clock the next day, it started again. And I was so upset because I thought, oh no, this is the worst kind of error in the world, computer error in the world, the kind where you don't know what's wrong. And it doesn't happen repeatably. You want a computer to behave logically.
Right.
You want it to be like Spock. You want it to if I do this, this will cause it to break.
Right.
But it was just happening sort of randomly. And that's what you can't abide. So I thought it couldn't be the cables because I pushed them and plugged them and they weren't as tight as I thought they could be. But I called one of my coworkers, Paul Alcorn, who knows a lot more than me about PC builds. I mean, I think I know my share, but this guy knows so much. And
it's his thing.
I put him and I put him on, on video call, and I was like opening up the back of the computer and showing it to him, and he's like, "Hey, I can see a little bit of daylight between the power supply cable and the extension cable." And I thought, and I honestly thought that maybe this is as tight as it could get. And one of my thoughts was maybe the extension cable itself is bad, and I should just try not to use the extension cable or to use a different extension cable. But he said, just try unplugging the extension cable from the motherboard first, and then like replug it to the regular power supply cable.
Mm-hmm.
So I did that. It seemed much tighter. I couldn't see any daylight.
Okay.
I thought the little teeth between them before I could see a little light shining through. But once I did that, I didn't see any light shining through. And that was almost a week ago. That was like 5 days ago, and I haven't had it happen since. So I think that was the cause. Now,
fantastic.
What is a little messed up is I had the computer running for like several days before that started happening. So what happened? I'm wondering if maybe something in the computer was pulling at the wire and it became looser. It also wasn't consistent because it wasn't so loose that it would just not work. It was like, it'll work for a little while and then it'll stop.
Makes me wonder if the expansion and contraction as temperatures changed in the case, as video card gets hotter or whatever, the metal changes a little bit. I wonder if that just jiggled it just right, and that's when it would kick on and off. There's all kinds of weird possibilities.
Maybe. Yeah.
Physics sucks.
Maybe. So I used to have one of the worst computer things I've ever had happen to me in so many years of building is I once had a computer when I was in college that I took with me to college, and I put it in the trunk, and I guess it got rocked around a lot on the drive, and it was okay, but periodically the screen would just freeze. And after that, and sometimes it would just come back on its own, and after I turned it off and on again, it would be okay for a while. Other times, what I would need to do is open the computer, pull the graphics card out, and put the graphics card back in, and then it would be okay for a little while, and then it would do it again. So, and it could be okay for like a week or 2 weeks, and then do it. So like it was, and then it could be okay. Then I could do it 5 times in a day. So like, it was like, that's the worst kind of computer error, because you just don't know like exactly why it's happening. I mean, in that case, I think it could have been the motherboard or the video card or the connection between the two of them, but I don't know for sure. So that's the kind of thing that really frustrates me. But so far, it seems like that's the issue. If it happens again, I will open up the computer again and I will see if that connection loosened. If it's something that loosens itself over time, then I will just try not to use the extension cord and try to stretch the wire, the original wire itself from the power supply, and and use that. But I like this extension cable because it looks cool, and it doesn't, like, without it was getting super tight. So that's but one thing that is super annoying, and this is a little bit of minutia for people who build PCs these days, is that you cannot easily replace the cables that your power supply comes with. You can get extension cables to connect to them, but you cannot easily replace them because they're different for every power supply. So it's ridiculous that there's no standard for that, but that's sort of how it is. So anyway,
so for our live viewers, I want to say 2 things. One, thank goodness for Nightbot, which is one of the best online things. If you're doing YouTube or Twitch stuff, you should have Nightbot set up, because it takes care of spammers pretty well. If you're in the chat room, you might have seen the spammer come in and then get knocked out by Nightbot. So anyway, but if you're watching live, we're going to do something a little different than normal right now. We're going to do part of the Piltch point now then we're going to do the regular show and come back, and you will have to have seen this part live to make the next part make sense. But if you're not watching live, you're not going to hear me say this anyway, so it doesn't really matter. So with that, let's change some branding real quick. All you.
All right, ready to go? All right, so this week I'm going to talk about something that is really important if you ever plan to sell or give away your PC. And I've been doing some work with a charity called Including You. By the way, I strongly recommend folks go to includingyou.org and check out their website and think about donating some used PCs that you have, perhaps. But meanwhile, if you are planning to sell or give away your PC, one thing you want to do is you want to securely erase it. So I'm going to show you something because I've got another computer next to me that I can securely, that I can show what does and does not work. So I'm going to switch to something else here. Okay. So this is a Windows 10 computer, not the one that I'm currently on, or else we'd have some problems. And you're going to see on it that this is the documents folder, and I have some documents there. I even have one, they look a little blurry, called mypasswords.txt. Don't worry, these aren't my actual. This isn't an actual password, but I want to demonstrate the gravity of the situation. All right. So one thing a lot of people would think to do, and I would have thought to do up until recently, is just to reset the computer, right? So if you go to, the standard thing to do if you want to give Windows to someone else is you go to reset this PC, and then you go and you hit get started, and you hit remove everything, right? Now this says that it removes all of your personal files, apps, and settings. So what should I see? I should see that this data recovery app here that I have on the desktop shouldn't be there. All my personal files shouldn't be there. And let's see what happens. So I'm going to hit remove everything. You're going to see I'm going to tell it to do a local reinstall. Let's see if that works. I may need, if this doesn't, okay. It's going to do a reset. And we are going to, now we can get back to, I'm just going to leave that be for a while and see if it is ready by the time we're ready to do the rest of Piltch Point. So hopefully it will be finished by that point. If you want to do 2 segments before we do Piltch Point tonight, that might be a good idea.
I'm fine with that.
Okay. All right. So while we're talking, this computer is preparing to reset itself, which could take it 15, 20 minutes or so. I don't know. And let's see if those files that we showed are still there after I reset.
Fantastic. Well, that's as somebody who has given PCs away, it's not that easy to do. So I look forward to seeing the rest of this process play out. And with that, I'm going to change some other branding. And we will start. Okay. Boop. There we go. All right. We will do some normalness from here on out, and we'll pick up where we left off in a little bit. This week's Nifty Gifties on F5 Live is proudly powered by the Microsoft Store. Whether you're looking for a new laptop, a tablet, an Xbox, games, or a whole lot more, you can get them at the Microsoft Store. And remember, for current students, faculty, parents, and active military, you can save up to 10% off almost everything. To browse the products and learn more about the discounts, you can go to f5live.tv/Microsoft. We've had quite a couple of years talking about security and privacy issues. It seems to be a constant situation. And this week, a report from a security researcher has indicated that there are additional concerns within the TikTok app. So the problem comes specifically from the in-app browser that exists within TikTok. Now, you might be thinking in your head, there's an in-app browser in TikTok. Why? It's just like all the social networks. They've got a browser built in, various levels of okay. Facebook is a little more full-featured than, say, Twitter's. But the idea is to keep you within the ecosystem and the experience of the social network without opening your default browser, whether it be, Safari or Chrome or Edge or DuckDuckGo or, whatever. It keeps you within the Twitter or TikTok or Facebook app. But with that comes some potential concerns. Now, I've never been a fan of doing anything of consequence within the browser of somebody else. I always want to know where I am and what I'm doing. Apple feels the same way. Today, apps aren't allowed to use an in-app browser to do logins. They have to be done natively on any newly updated applications. This is a rule I just learned about through a project that I'm working on. But they will allow you to do other things, such as open a link in Twitter or click on an ad in TikTok. So what has happened with TikTok? According to this researcher, what they're doing is they're injecting some JavaScript into the browser on page loads to track your keystrokes. So, why would they do that? Well, I think as anybody who's been around the internet for a long time can tell you, keyloggers have long been a problem on computers because they're able to watch you type in your email address and your password. And now they know what you're up to. They can watch you put in things like credit card numbers, which is, of course, one of the reasons why I always recommend privacy. Because you don't have to worry about that as much. They can watch you type in anything and then correspond it back to you, or just steal it outright and use it for something else. Like a credit card, they can go off and make other purchases with it. Or, social security number. And a zip code is just about enough to steal somebody's identity. So if this is accurate, which the security researcher is known for accuracy, so I'm going to make the assumption that they are likely accurate, this would be a huge concern. Again, I always recommend that you don't do anything of consequence through a browser that is not a browser, right? We know that Chrome, we know that Safari, we know that Edge, we know that DuckDuckGo, we know that these are browsers. This is what they do, and that's not what TikTok does. So you shouldn't be doing anything of consequence there. But if you have, maybe keep an eye out. What do you think, Avram?
I mean, obviously, there's been security concerns with TikTok for a while. If I'm using a browser, I would rather use a browser that is made by a company who I trust a little more than a social network.
Sure.
So, I understand there's certainly always trust issues with every company, whether it's Google or Microsoft or Apple, but I would trust Google, Microsoft, Apple, the Mozilla Foundation, or somebody else who's known for browsers like Opera a lot more than I would trust TikTok with my data.
Sure. And if you're clicking on an ad in a TikTok video and it opens a website in the browser and you're looking at shoes and you're not purchasing, you're just looking at a website that has shoes, okay, maybe, right? Risk is low there, but it's at that point where all of a sudden now you're making a purchase, right? Because now you're putting credit card information in. There's all kinds of other personal information that's making its way into that interaction. None of that personal, private stuff should be done in a browser that's not a browser. Microsoft, Google, Apple, Opera, Mozilla, they make browsers. That's what they do. They're a browser because they're a browser, not they're a browser because they want to watch what you're doing online. It just, and I know for a lot of people, you may have never considered that it's a web browser running within Facebook or TikTok or Twitter or whatever, but it is. It is not your browser. It is their browser. It is something unrelated to what you usually use. Yes, if you're using it on an iPhone, it is going to be Apple's rendering engine. It's going to be the Safari rendering engine because of certain rules that Apple has about browsers. But that's it. That's the extent of the crossover between those two things. It is not your browser. It is not what you were expecting. Don't do anything of consequence in there. Always, most of them have a menu item where you can open it in your browser. Do that. If you're going to do anything of consequence, do that. And I do that for articles, even. Like, I don't like to do anything within the Facebook or Twitter browser simply because I don't know what's going on. If it's Safari or Chrome or Edge, I generally know what's going on. I generally know publicly traded companies. There's information they have to provide about certain things. But that's my current position on it. Do you think I'm going above and beyond? Am I going too far with it that I like?
No,
I
you
like
can't.
to read articles in it.
No, I mean, I think you can't be. You really can't be too careful when it comes to online. I mean, when it comes to things that are or anonymous anyway. Like, honestly, I'm not super concerned about because it's just tracking, stuff for advertising behavior and stuff like that. But you gotta be careful. You obviously hold what the company, what information you're giving out to companies. So it's obviously important. So you gotta be careful.
For sure. So just know, in-app browsers, never the way to go. If you can avoid it, you definitely should. For those of you who are watching live, I'm going to check on Avram. How are we doing over there?
Okay.
Because your connection's getting weird.
Am I looking ready?
Yeah, you're real pixely and your audio is coming and going.
Let's see. Could it be because I'm making a boot disk in a window and it is down?
Potentially?
It gets better. Okay. I'm canceling this. Let's see if it gets any better. I canceled that. Did it get any better?
Well, your audio is stable.
It wasn't. So now it's not downloading anything, and it's still.
Well,
okay.
Well, the video sometimes takes a little while to clean back up, but your audio isn't cutting in and out like it was a minute ago. Oh, yep. See, you're clearing up now.
Okay. Okay. All right. Wow. I did not realize I had that little bandwidth. All right. Well, forget that. I was just going to, I was just kind of cheating in that I wanted to have a Windows install disk to show you during our next segment. So I couldn't find the one that I had. So I was making one in another window.
Gotcha.
And it didn't like me for that. But that's never mind that. We don't need that necessarily to do what I was going to show you. So
okay.
So next, sorry. But anyway, we're still going on the reset.
Okay, so we'll go on to
yes.
Extra Life? Okay.
Yes.
Sounds good. This week's Extra Life on F5 Live is proudly powered by EXA. EXA brings the latest technology to gamers, offering the most immersive products for the ultimate gaming experience. They've compiled the best elements of cutting-edge ENC tech, Bluetooth 5, 7.1 surround, plus extra features like dual mics, ultra-low latency, all into their headsets. So you can enjoy a sensational gaming experience. They've got headsets for Xbox, PlayStation, Switch, and PC, plus they won't break the bank. To learn more about the headsets that are available and any current promotions that are going on, you can go to f5live.tv/exa. I will tell you that I have got, over at Strike, I have got headsets and mice from them, and I am very happy with that purchase. They really are great headsets for way cheaper than they should be. Anyway, let's talk about some other gaming stuff going on. We know that retro gaming consoles have been really popular the last couple of years. The NES Mini came out, the NES Mini, the Genesis Mini 1, and shortly we will be seeing the Genesis Mini 2. When it was announced, I think in February, they told 17 of the 60 titles, I believe, that will be on the console. This week we got a full list, and in that list are a couple of interesting revelations, including 2 games that have never existed before. These are legitimate Genesis-era games that were developed in the Genesis era. The second one having been developed in 92 and never released for whatever reason, and are coming to this console. They will be included on this console. The first is, I think it's going to be pronounced Devi and Pi, Devi and Pii. I don't know. I'm going to guess it's not Devi and P. I'm hoping. But it's a game from the developer of Sonic 3 that is a very different game than Sonic and 3. From what I understand, it's a paddle style game. It actually sounds like one of the games from it's gone. The Fall Guys. It sounds like one of the games from Fall Guys. And you're trying to juggle angels and bounce off demons or something like that. It doesn't sound like the world's biggest game, but it is interesting to see something so different from the developer of Sonic. And then there's a title called Star Mobile, or maybe Star Mobile. I'm guessing it's Star Mobile. Because it's from a studio called Mindware. The game was completed in 92, never came out. Heavy focus on puzzles, which for me, a lot of potential. It sounds a lot like Topple, the board game, the tabletop game. You're stacking stars on a balanced, maybe mobile. Might be, so I might have been wrong. So that sounds interesting. I think everybody knows I'm a big puzzle game fan. So that sounds like it could be interesting. And then we've got a whole bunch of games that used to be arcade exclusives that will be on this as well, which is another interesting move. Fantasy Zone, Space Harrier, and Space Harrier 2. In fairness, the sequel was available on console, but the original wasn't. A game called Spatter, Super Locomotive. I'm going to tell you, Super Locomotive sounds tedious. It's all about switching track switches to avoid crashes. And then VS Puyo Puyo Sun, which is the third entry in a franchise in which you match colors. Again, console, originally they were arcade exclusives that are now coming to console. It's really an interesting an interesting move, and we've been seeing that with titles that didn't really exist before. I think the last one even had one title that was never released, or maybe it was the SNES. There's been so many of these at this point, right, that I don't remember which one's which, but there was another one of these that also had a game that was never released. It's a really interesting move to bring unreleased games into the marketplace 30 years later.
So it makes you wonder why they weren't released in the first place.
Sure.
And how many other how many other interesting games are sitting on the cutting room floor somewhere. Was it a legal issue? Was it incomplete and they had to complete it in some way to get it to be usable? Did the studio that made it go bankrupt?
That was what I was wondering. That one in particular, I was wondering if there were like bankruptcies or something involved.
Right, like why, But it's amazing some of the things that are on the cutting room floor, and makes you wonder what other games haven't come out that would have been interesting if they did come out and could still come out. Like how many things are sort of, I don't know. Just makes me think like this weekend, my 3-year-old for some reason got really into wanting me to play her. She always wants me to really play her music videos, but she's gotten really decided she wants to watch the Thriller music video over and over again. And like when the zombie parts come on, which is a lot of the parts, she'll like hide under a blanket or something. But still, she's like, why do you want to watch it then? She's like, oh, it's scary, but I really like it. And you think about it, right? Like I was looking it up for her, and did you know that there's like a whole part of the Thriller song that is on the cutting room floor, like
really?
that was never used? So like that whole like Vincent Price rap, like it was like twice as long, and they cut half of it for I'm not sure why. So like there's just a lot of interesting stuff that's like, how much stuff do you see in games and movies elsewhere that sort of that never came out or was left on the cutting room floor. I'm always a huge fan of like, oh, was there a deleted scene to this? Was there an alternate whatever? Because and sometimes you're like, oh, they were right, they shouldn't have used this. But then other times you're like, most people wouldn't have liked this, but I'm kind of glad for the extra content.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it will be interesting to see whether these are games that people will agree should have been on the cutting room floor,
right?
Or they will say, hey, this was actually like good thing. We get to play this now. Makes you wonder what else is stuck. What else? What other games have never been released that you haven't seen, or what other features of games haven't you seen?
Right. Yeah, for sure. And some of these games, like the ones from the arcade, some of them are going to have new features. One of them in particular, because obviously arcade games are made to be difficult, because especially from that era, because they wanted you to pump quarters in, right? And so the developers that did the port on one of these games have created a easy mode versus the arcade mode, which is more like a standard game mode than a pump quarters into an arcade machine, which I think is a really interesting move. That is part of the port. They're literally adding a game mode. There's one, I don't remember which one. One of them is literally changing the way the graphics work. Because there was a problem with the game, and so it choked. And so they're completely changing the way the sprite engine works, because it's going to make the gameplay more smooth and less kind of chaotic. So they're not just like throwing an emulator on a Raspberry Pi and taking the ROM and giving it to you, which they could do, and people would be very happy with it. But in this case, that's not what they're doing. They're legitimately doing ports of the games, adding new features, fixing graphical issues from old games. I think that's a really interesting thing. Now there's the conversation about, do we want retro games left intact with exploits and bugs and everything, or do we want 30 plus years later there to be some fixes? That conversation can happen, but I do think it's interesting that several of these games are getting new modes and fixing problems, and it's a really interesting move. They're not just, here are some games, right? It's the difference between spending this much money, and I don't remember what the retail price on this thing is, but I think the last one was like $79 and $99, so I expect it to be up there. It's the difference between the $19 Wish thing, right, or the Soldier Boy console, which was just a Wish console with his name on it, where they just take it, they don't even test the games, they just put a bunch of ROMs on a thing and send it to you, and does it work? I don't care. They're going to a lot of trouble on this. But in the full list of games, there are some ones that I'm excited about. I'm a big fan of Toe Jam and Earl, and we're getting the second one released on this console, so I'm pretty excited about that. Super Street Fighter 2 New Challengers is going to be on here. What was the other? Clay Fighter, which ironically I have for the original Genesis. I think I have 2 or 3 copies of it. Earthworm Jim 2, but the one that I think is going to get people the most excited is coming from the Sega CD, because it's Echo the Dolphin. That was a game that did not get, in its time, did not get the love that it deserved, and it's going to be on here. So I'm really excited about that. I want one of these pretty badly. I'm looking forward to pre-orders opening up. I don't have any of the other retro games, the other retro consoles. I'm going to put it out there because I've got the actual ones. But this one's actually making me think pretty seriously about it. I know you're a fan of retro games.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was not a big Genesis player, so these games aren't super familiar to me.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's great that they're coming. That there's more opportunities for folks to enjoy these games and to try like a couple of new games that they've never tried before.
Yeah.
So that's really cool.
I'm not going to lie, I wasn't aware that Populous had been available for the console. I was a big fan of that game, and I'm a little shocked to find out there was a console version of it. Maybe I wouldn't have been in the time. Maybe I knew it then. But that's going to be on here too, which, I mean, you can play today on your PC if you're a Game Pass subscriber or an EA Play? Is that their subscription service? It's available from them right now, but I'm gonna play that one on a console. I want to try that. That's a mouse game. That seems chaotic to me, but I look forward to it. If I get to put my hands on him, because limited number coming to the United States. Fingers crossed I can get one. We'll definitely have videos coming from it. And I suspect that Alante and I will likely do Twitch streams with it, because that's going to be fun. All right, live people, hold on for just a second. How are we doing over there?
Can we do one more segment, as the reset has given me an error message saying out of the box settings failed.
Okay.
So I'm letting it's like half reset. So can we do our next segment? And we might be there
100%.
by that time. Sorry, I was trying to get it. I was trying to get it while we were doing this. It's did a weird thing that says OOBE, something went wrong, OOBE settings failed, and the solution for that seems to be rebooting. So I'm
Okay. That's
rebooting.
the
And
out
if
of
that
box
doesn't work,
experience failed.
yes, it doesn't like. I
Okay.
think it's because I tried to fool it by using a. Wait, let's see. I tried to fool it by not by turning off the internet so I could use a local account,
Sure.
which Windows 10 apparently does not like now with the latest Windows. Oh, actually, this isn't. Yeah, with Windows 10 does not like.
Okay.
Please don't turn off your device. Yeah, we'll try. All
All
right,
right.
let's see.
Let me set for yellow. All right. We appreciate our
Yeah.
live listeners and viewers bearing with us while we do this. This is definitely a unique thing we're trying tonight, and we will make it
Yes.
work.
Indeed.
All right, let's keep going then. This week's news from the tubes on F5 Live is proudly powered by Malwarebytes. Whether you use a PC, a Mac, or a mobile device, Malwarebytes Premium is the company's strongest protection ever. It fights threats that traditional antivirus software can't stop, plus it takes care of standard threats like worms, trojans, spyware exploits, and a whole lot more. It allows you to use your computer and mobile devices with confidence and peace of mind. To learn more and to get a special price right now, you can go to f5live.tv/malwarebytes. Google search, obviously, they own the industry. 92, I think, percent of all internet searches are done through Google. But if you've used it in the last year or so, you might have noticed that the search results have gotten a little weird, particularly on certain types of content. Entertainment, for example, has been a little spotty. Your top results are always kind of useless. And Google has recognized that. They've heard the complaints. There are Twitter threads complaining about certain topics on Google just becoming completely valueless. And so the company has promised to make a change. They've got some big changes coming to the algorithm and the way that they deal with search results. And they are specifically aimed at these clickbait style, which in the proper term, the proper definition of the term, not the way that we tend to use it, meaning a headline that's a little misleading. This is proper clickbait. This is articles that are maybe not written by the site that you're going to, or they're aggregations of small amounts of nothing that add up to large amounts of nothing. Google is specifically trying to target those, which I'll tell you, I think is a good thing. I don't use Google for search much, but when I do seem to find myself in this position. And I find myself in this position across the search engines, because it's usually when I go over to Google is because, Bing or DuckDuckGo or Brave have completely failed me on search results. And Google tends to fail me in that same way on those search results because everybody's using the same general metadata to build their indexes. And so Google's saying, all right, we're going to start looking at that metadata a little differently and try and make these search results better, specifically to focus on made by people for people and to minimize the bot algorithmic concatenation nonsense that I tend to find, especially with entertainment. Have you experienced this, Avram? Do you find yourself in this position?
Oh, sure. Listen, I actually can talk to this. Actually, this is a very fruitful very. This is a topic I actually know quite a bit about
Mm-hmm.
but I know about it actually from the content producer end, because we talk about this a lot at work, at my day job, right? Because we talk about this a lot because if you we don't want to get caught in we don't want to get dinged for this, right? So
Right.
for clickbait, and our company is very concerned about any of the sites that uh, our parent company Future is very concerned about any of our sites being dinged for clickbait,
Sure.
and they are very like on our all of us, like whether it's Tom's Hardware or some of our sister sites, very on us about like be really careful about what you put in your headlines. Don't put something in. Don't promise something in the headline that you don't deliver accurately in the story, right?
Sure.
Like they are very very concerned about it because they don't want like you as a publisher can get in trouble with Google. They
Yeah.
will send you warnings, and if you get warned and you don't stop or whatever, you if they it's like a content warning. If they think that you are doing clickbait, you could be kicked out of Google or punished or whatever. And being kicked
Certainly,
out of Google
certainly a
is
drop
like,
site rank.
or your site rank drop. That's like being Socrates and being asked to leave the Greek state of Athens or something. You're going to be you might as well drink the I don't know, the hemlock or something, because your
Right.
site is done if you
Yeah.
can't be found in Google. So,
Because again,
so
92%.
anyway, right. So, so you need to be in Google. Like um, we cannot afford to not be findable in
Right.
Google. So it it is very serious. Now, what you said interesting about for people by people is another thing that Google has been talking about. Now, it's interesting that they say they're rolling out an algorithm now because they've been rolling out algorithms to deal with this for a while. So if
Yeah.
they say they're doing it now, this means that they're continuing to do something that they have been doing actually.
Well,
So
they are in this particular case. It's the type of content that they're focusing on this time. Like last year, I think it was last October, they rolled out a big update, a big for people by people update to the algorithm around product reviews and entertainment reviews, because there were sites that were taking little and making little, bot generated algorithmic concatenations of review, and it had nice words and it didn't have anything useful. And so they went on a big thing about trying to solve that just shy of a year ago now, and they're going to enhance that as part of this update and start applying some of that technology to other topics, including entertainment. So this and the reviews wasn't the first one either. It was the biggest one though. It was their biggest hit in a couple of years, and this one sounds like it's going to be bigger.
so Google is really big on something now that they call EAT, expertise, authority, and trust.
Mm-hmm.
So um, not all so they want to not only does it matter that these you are the original source of content, which as it should matter, right?
Right.
But they but authority matters.
Right.
So like it's really important, for example, to have a byline of a human on articles, and
Right.
you will have a reputation. So if you have a reputation for writing about, technology, and your byline is on it, I mean, I don't know how, nobody outside of Google really knows how well this works and how
Right.
granular it works. Like if my name is on it and I'm known for writing about Raspberry Pi, but I'm not known for writing about, uh, Mac OS or something, but I write an article about Mac OS. Does Google go, look, that's okay because he knows about technology and that's why we're
Right.
sorting it? Or no, actually, we know we're really granular and we know that this guy never writes about Mac OS, so he doesn't have a lot of authority.
Right.
Like, we don't, I don't know if anybody really knows that. But the point is, Google has made a point of saying, like, we want real people. We want to be able to trust these people. Like, it helps you to have a bio online and all that stuff. Like, it matters. So now, like, whether if that doesn't matter to it, we don't know when Google says that these things matter, how good their technology is, like how
Right.
smart it is. Is it
True.
as smart as a person to say, like, oh yeah, I trust that person because they're used to writing about this, or this really looks like clickbait to me. It's hard to say, like, how good it's going to be at picking out clickbait. But what we can say is, like, as a publisher, you engage in clickbait at your own risk, right? So I guess the thing is, like, don't promise something that you can't deliver,
True.
right? Like, don't say, like, hey, this this thing is coming out on this day, or no, or something like, we now know the release date of the new iPhone, the next iPhone, and then you click through and it's like, we think the release date might be in September,
Right.
but we don't really know. Like that, that's clickbait. It's like, hey, I promised you something in the headline,
Right.
something definitive in the headline, but then when you got to the body, it was actually like, actually, I can't really tell you this,
Right.
right?
Right.
Similarly, you have a lot of, now what I don't know is whether this kind of jives with images, where you have, my favorite bad kind of clickbait is the one where you get a picture of something, but it's not actually delivered in the story. So you're like, you won't believe who died or whatever.
Right.
And it'll have a picture of someone who you think is alive. And you're like, oh man, I better click through to find out
Right.
whether this person's really dead.
It's a
And then
picture
you click
of
through and they're not even on the list.
it's a picture of Chris Pratt. You won't believe who died this year, and it's a picture of Chris Pratt, and you're like, well, I know for a fact he didn't. So what are we talking about here?
Unless, and you're like, hey, wait a second, did he just die yesterday, today?
That's what they're hoping. That's what they're hoping for.
Right? Or, remember her? What she looks like now is jaw-dropping.
Right.
Anyway,
Number 13 will amaze you.
Yes. Now, but I gotta caution everyone. A lot of that clickbait's not in Google. A lot of that clickbait doesn't come from Google. So
comes from Facebook.
If it's not on it, yes, but it also comes from services like Taboola, which are things that they pay. It's sort of like an ad. They pay for distribution on different sites, and then the companies who want their content distributed through these networks can use clickbaity images because, whatever.
Because they don't care.
I mean, there's a couple of them. I'm not just picking on the one. There's a couple of services like this where, like, some of the content can be quite legit, but also companies can come out with listicles and things like that they put there, and then, like, you click it and you're like, hey, wait a second, this isn't quite what I expected. Or my favorite one is the one where it's like it has this picture of bananas boiling, or something, boiling bananas, and it's like, cardiologists recommend this one thing to flush your bowels or something.
Yeah.
It's like, well, wait a second, why are cardiologists recommending I flush my bowels in the first place?
True.
Is it definitely boiling bananas to do that? Like, and then you click through and it's like something completely else. So, like, yeah, like, Google's not going to solve that problem because a lot of that stuff doesn't come from Google listings.
Right.
Google's already too smart for that. But I think some of the things that end up in Google News and Discover and things like that, could be somewhat deceptive. Or you put out, people might be searching for something, like they want information that doesn't exist, and you're trying to answer their query. which I get it, like why someone who's publishing on the web would want to do that. Like, let's say,
Right.
for example, someone was searching for when does when will I think it's something people really are looking forward to. Okay, when will the when will the next Intel chip come out?
Sure.
When will Raptor Lake come out or something like that? And they're searching for it, or like the next, or some Marvel movie does. And when will the Fantastic Four movie come out?
Right.
Like, we don't know, right? Uh, there's some hints though, like, oh well, we think it's going to come out in 2024. Or somebody's dropped a tea leaf or whatever, right? So you search for that, and then you get a headline that's really quite definitive, and it's like, Fantastic Four is coming out. Fantastic Four release date revealed, and then you click it, and it's like, well, we think it might be on this day because of this and what they've done before, but we really don't know. Like, that's clickbait. Now, are they totally not answering your question? No, they're sort of answering it sometimes, but not what you'd expect. And so I think Google's right to crack down on this, um, but nobody really knows how effective their technology is at doing it, and whether people that are doing legit editorial are going to be dinged for it. Um, and we may never know, because those who are writing stories may have their stuff get delisted or deranked or whatever, and they may
Right.
not know why. So it's hard to say. If we could read the mind of Google, we would be better off. But on the other hand, we would all be using whatever the method is to get to number one, and that's why
Right.
they don't want to tell you exactly what they're doing.
As I always say, when you create rules, you create a game. And when you create a game, you're going to have people that play it better. So that's if we knew what all the rules were for the game, you'd have a lot of people playing it at a high level, and those people don't tend to be the ones that you want playing at a high level. So, you know, knowing has its ups and downs.
Yep,
All right, how are you coming over there?
I'm good. I'm good. We can go now.
Okay. Then,
We can do this now.
all right, then let me set everything for that. Is that Piltch point? That's Piltch point. For the people who are watching live, I have these in order. And when we throw things out of order, I have to go searching to make sure I've got all the bits and pieces that I need. All right, so that's Piltch. That's Piltch. Okay. And then I need this one. All right. This week's Piltch Point with Avram Piltch is proudly powered by PureVPN. The best way to protect your privacy online is with PureVPN. You can hide your online activities, say goodbye to regional restrictions, and improve your streaming quality. Plus, it's available for almost all of your devices. You can get a special price and a 31-day money-back guarantee right now by going to piltchpoint.live/PureVPN. All right, Avram, we've got a really interesting and unique show and tell going on this week, right?
Yes. So okay. So what we had started talking about earlier in the overall show uh, is wiping your computer, wiping your drive, whether you're selling the drive itself or the computer itself. Let's talk about it as if it's the whole computer, though, because that poses some different challenges. In that, let's assume that it's your computer's boot drive that you're trying to wipe. So earlier in the show, what we did is we took a Windows 10 installation, which I'm going to show you right now, and we performed a reset on it using Windows built-in reset with the option to remove all of your person's files. So let's see how that turned out. I'm going to switch to going to switch to that computer. So this is another computer I have. This is the one that, this is the one. Now I reset it, and you can see that the documents folder is empty. Never mind that this data recovery software is there. I've installed it while you weren't looking to show you something. So the documents folder is empty. For all intents and purposes, it looks like my important data is gone, and I can give this computer away to someone without fear of them getting at my data. But let's go look at EaseUS Data Recovery, which is a free piece of software, I should tell you. You can get up to 2 gigabytes back with it for free. If you want bigger than 2 gigabyte files, then you got to pay. But this can show you what's there. So looking here, this shows a whole lot of stuff. And let's go. It really helps if you know what you're looking for, but not necessarily. So if I look at, so for example, lost files. Here were the lost files that were just deleted. If I go here was a user called the user I had created, include you. But here, I could comb through this for a while, but I'm just going to make this a little easier. I'm going to do a search. So I'm going to search. I had a file called My Passwords, if you may recall, and I'm going to search it. Look at that. My Passwords shows up. Look at that. My Passwords.txt is right there. Now, I'm going to try to recover this file. The fact that I could even see the file name is bad news, right? But let's see here. Now, the thing that you want to do is recover it to another disk. You do not want to recover it to the disk that you are on. So I have another USB drive in here, which is the Windows 11 install disk for other reasons. I'm going to recover it to this. All right, look at that. Now let's open it and see if I can read it. Look at that.
And that is definitely what
What
we
do you
saw
see?
earlier.
That is the username and password that I had put into my passwords file. Look at that. Anyone with free software could now get your data off of it after you've done what looks like a decent reset. Well, this tells us something. We need a better method of resetting our computer.
For sure.
So there's a couple of things to talk about here about how you can delete. So one is that a lot of people like to do something where they're overwriting the disk. There's a very popular program called DBAN that is a free bootable thing that will overwrite your disk several times. This is not the best method for an SSD. For a hard drive, a mechanical hard drive, by all means, use DBAN, DBAN, and install it and make a bootable disk out of it. And you can use the Department of Defense method of wiping. That's great. But with SSDs, there's some other challenges. One of the other challenges, although I don't think this is too serious of a challenge, is that your SSDs use something called over-provisioning. Every modern SSD has a little bit of the disk space that's held in reserve. So if you've got a 1 terabyte drive, it's possible that, I don't know, 5%, 10% will be held in, extra is available that the disk secretly switches back and forth from, because we know that SSDs have a limited number of write cycles. So if your SSD can only, and that's usually measured in terabytes, TBW, terabytes written, right? So you don't want to wear out too many of the blocks on the drive, because otherwise you would not be able to write to it. And that, realistically, it takes a really long time, many years of a lot of writing for that to happen. Like, you'd have to be writing all day, every day, your whole drive for like several years to wear it out. So for most people, this is not a serious concern. But nevertheless, the system has some reserve storage that it puts in and out of circulation. Therefore, there's data on that over provision area that overwriting the disk will not touch. Now, the good news is neither will the data recovery software get to it. And when you do eventually write, that over provisioned area eventually is used or cycled into, sort of things come in and out of the over provisioned area, I believe. It will be overwritten by the time you see it. So it may or may not be that huge of a concern, but there are other things you should be doing to purge an SSD. For one thing, you don't need to overwrite it more than once. So there's a couple of different things. One, and I will show you our article on this, that you can do is the best way to delete an SSD is not always available, and that is, I'll show you right here. Oops, I keep hitting the turn screen off rather than the share screen button. One is that you can use a built-in SSD erasure tool. If your motherboard has a secure erase utility in the BIOS, that would be fantastic. They don't all have it, though. The computer I'm talking to you on has it in the ASUS BIOS. The computer I'm erasing does not have it in its Gigabyte BIOS. So some have it and some do not. Those are good because you don't need to boot into an operating system and it will reset the drive. Because modern SSDs have a secure erase command that they can receive that will just automatically reset all the blocks to their factory state. So that's really good. Now, some manufacturers also have their own utilities that will do this for you, but you have to have that manufacturer's SSD and it has to be supported. So like Samsung SSD Magician has a great secure erase feature. That's good. Although some of these tools may or may not have a bootable disk version, so you might have to have your SSD attached as an external drive to another computer and then run this to erase. So the easiest way, and this will work really well, but won't touch the over provision area, but will apparently wipe out the map to it. So therefore, basically, a normal person using normal software should not be able to recover your data, would be to use Windows 10 or 11's DiskPart feature. So I'm going to show you how that works, because that also will work for hard drives, although it will only do, I believe, one pass. So the DiskPart feature, the DiskPart tool, will allow you to run something called Clean All, which will then do a really quick erasure. So if your drive was not the boot drive of the computer trying to erase, you could just go straight to a command prompt, run it as admin, and do the deletion from there. But it's somewhat of a challenge if this is your C drive, the boot drive that you're trying to erase. So what to do? Well, you should take a Windows install disk, as I have now put into this computer, and you should boot off of that. So we're going to restart this computer here, and I'm going to make sure by hitting the F12 key when it comes up, hopefully fast enough, that I'm going to boot off of the install disk that I had created. So you may or may not see as quickly as I do the BIOS message come up, and I'm hitting F12. Yay, I hit it fast enough. And now I'm going to choose to boot off of, I believe Mushkin Partition 1 is the right one. But if not, we'll have to do maybe 2, because this disk has been done a bunch of times. Let's see. Come on, are we doing it? Yes. Okay. So you can see now that we are in the Windows install. This would look the same whether you were using a Windows 10 or 11 install disk. They're pretty much the same. I think the color might be different. So what to do? Okay, so you hit Shift F10 and that will give you a command prompt, right? Now, this is an administrative command prompt, by the way, so you have the admin rights. You first thing you do is you enter disk part. That loads disk part. It's going to take a second, and then it's going to spit you back another prompt. So just to be sure, the right thing to do is type lists disk, and it's going to show you all of your disks. Notice that I have two disks on here. One of them is the C drive, and one of them is the install USB. So I want to make sure I'm deleting the right one. So that would be disk 0. It's almost always disk 0 if it's. So I'm going to say select disk 0. And now, very simply, now that it's selected, I'm going to type clean all and hit enter. All right. I've hit clean all. Now, this could take a few minutes, and we don't need to sit here and watch it. But that is the process. When this is done, nothing will remain on this disk. It is theoretically possible that in the over-provisioned area of the SSD, there might be data from some earlier time that someone with like a professional data recovery service could get to. But a person using over-the-counter software, regular software, should not be able to access any data that you've left on there. It should all be gone. I actually got advice to use this utility from a company called Drive Savers. That is a professional data recovery service. That you can send them your drive and pay them a lot of money to try to get data off of it. And they say that while they have not validated the disk part clean all on all hardware, that it should do the trick, to quote them, and that they like it. I mean, I think it's pretty effective. So that's my trick. Now, there's another tool that I'm in the process of testing called Hearted Magic that costs $15. That supposedly will also get to the over-provision area, no matter what disk you have. And I tried it just before we went on air, and it would not work with my disk. So nothing is perfect, but this is pretty darn close.
That's pretty funny, actually. It's supposed to work with everything,
I mean,
except the one that you're testing with. And that's always the way it works, though, right? Like, that's the.
I'm not sure. There's probably something I'm doing wrong, but it allows you to choose the disk in this PC that I'm wiping is an NVMe disk, and it had me choose NVMe. It's like, what kind of disk do you want to wipe? So I said NVMe, and then it said you don't have an NVMe disk installed, so I can't do this. But I don't know what to say about that because I do have an NVMe disk installed. So like, so that's so I'm trying to figure out. I went into the BIOS of the computer to see if there's something I have to change. It's funny, the BIOS of the computer also says I don't have an NVMe disk installed, but I'm sure that I do. So like, I don't know. There's something a little weird going on. But anyway, that is another possible tool that one could have. But I think using the free Windows method that I showed will work. Is probably the right solution for most people. But simply resetting or simply deleting files or even simply reformatting a drive will not necessarily make your disk safe to give away. And that's something that everybody should keep in mind. We have an article about this on the homepage right now at tomshardware.com.
Very nice. And I can vouch for the recovery software that you just showed. I have used it on disks that have gone bad, like where the disk has actually started to fail, and the master boot record has been toasted, or the partition table has been toasted. I've been able to go back in and recover an entire hard drive using that tool, which was pretty impressive. Obviously, you can't do a 2 gig free version. I had to pay for it, but I did recover entire drives. And I also did. I had an SD card during CES die on me. And I suspect that something caused the partition table to fail on it, and we had interviews on it, and I used it, and I absolutely recovered all the videos that we had, all the interviews we had done that day on that card. So it's a really great tool.
Right. But I mean, so that, I guess that's the side story is ESUS data recovery is pretty good.
Yeah.
But
it's a really cool tool for what it's for,
tool.
And it's terrifying for what it's not for.
Right. I mean, so I was looking at it from the other perspective, which is, well, I mean, I want it to work well because I want to see if it finds something. By the way, DriveSaver is a very interesting company. If you run a business and you're wiping a lot of drives and you're really curious about how well they've been wiped, you can pay them to do an erase verification or something where they will take a drive and make sure that it's real, they can't get anything off of it, because they have tools and methods and whatever that are proprietary that they use that are supposed to be better than commercial software has.
Sure.
And if you're worried about like the NSA or something getting your data, then at least make sure that you're able to do a secure that it's possible that they'll be able to get it to the over-provision area or something, although you may not have any interesting data there anyway. But the thing is, this method, the clean all method I'm showing you, you should also use it on flash drives, on USB flash drives or microSD cards or whatever. So if you're giving a USB flash drive to somebody, just formatting it may not be enough. They may be able to get the data off a flash drive. So, the principle of security is don't trust people. So just because you're saying, oh yeah, my friend, I gave them a USB flash drive because they needed one because I've got drawers full of them, whatever, wipe it first, right? You never know whose hands it'll end up in, and all they need to do is be really curious and run a data recovery, and they may be able to find something interesting on there. Of course, you shouldn't keep your passwords in the text file either, but that goes without saying. I just did that to show that your sensitive data can be easily recovered.
Yeah, and easily recovered, I think, is the important part, because again, that tool works really well even for complex data, which was why I mentioned it. It's able to very accurately and very efficiently recover complex data like video that can be spread across a drive in a weird way. A text document, no problem. It's gonna pull up text documents all day long. And if I do a scan on a drive and I'm trying to be malicious, what's the first thing I'm gonna type into that search box in the top? Password.
Yep. So yes, and you can search, right? Because it may not necessarily be easy to find. You can search and see if there's something interesting in there. So, there's a lot of people who are probably going to flea markets or things like that, wherever they buy old PCs. They may find something interesting on there.
Yeah, good point.
Don't let it be your drive.
I just off camera over here, I have, and I've mentioned it before, but it happens to be out right now. I have a bag full of old laptops. The one that used to power the Skype connection for you many years ago, all sitting down here. And yeah, I mean, there's almost certainly, well, one of these for sure has scary stuff on it, but there's almost certainly personal and or private stuff on all of those, or maybe even corporate confidential stuff on any of those. So yeah, you don't want anything out of your sight without knowing that it's safe. So
yeah. Now, of course, the alternate view that a lot of people take is to physically destroy the drives, but that's a shame because there's charities including you that really could use donated PCs, and if you could delete stuff such that you feel confident giving it away, then you should.
Right, for sure. And it looks like that process is super easy. I'm so glad that it's, full featured like that on 10 and 11. So,
Yep. Yeah. I mean, what you won't see because it's still going is I've done this and then gone back with the recovery software. I couldn't find those files anymore.
gotcha.
Um, so that's the reveal. That's the important part.
Yeah, that is the important part. Well, as always, Avram, appreciate you bringing this to us. This one has a special place in my heart, again, because there's literally a stack of laptops over here to my side, and and then I've got, desktops and stuff everywhere. So if those were to get out of my control, it could be a problem. You definitely want to be able to secure wipe them. So definitely appreciate that. And as always, I look forward to what we talk about next. This week's DRM Not Included on F5 Live is proudly powered by Amazon Prime. You know that you get free shipping, but there's a whole lot more with your subscription. You get free music with Amazon Prime Music, free TV, movies, and documentaries with Amazon Prime Video, free games, and a free Twitch subscription to support the content creator of your choice with Amazon Prime Gaming, plus a whole lot more. We've got links to our favorite features, these and others, plus a 30-day free trial and the ability to give Prime as a gift, all in one place by going to f5live.tv/prime. All right, so there was a possibility of us talking about a competitor to Prime tonight because Walmart Plus is teaming up with Paramount Plus. Too many pluses. I'm tired of it. I talked about it on GNC Week in Review. If you want to hear more about that, you can go over there. But we're going to talk about another topic that Avram and I have discussed at different levels over the last year or so, and that is the current state of the movie theater business. In particular, Cinemark, which was, if you were watching live, was the word I had misspelled. If you're in the U.S., you may not recognize that brand name because in the U.S., they operate under the name Regal Cinemas. But in other parts of the world, the Cinemark or Cineworld brands are used. And then there's Israel, where they're called like Yes Go or something like that, which Yes Planet. Okay, whatevs. But they operate under a variety of names. Picture House. But they are likely to file bankruptcy in the next couple of weeks. Sales have not recovered the way they had hoped. And there's a couple of reasons for this in our analysis of what has happened over the last year or so, as we've discussed on the show previously. One is that people have just gotten comfortable seeing new movies at home. During lockdown, a lot of the stuff that was slated for theaters didn't come to theaters. Black Widow famously was destined for theaters and ended up on Disney Plus, which ended in a lawsuit between some of the actors and Disney. But lots of stuff moved over to streaming because the theaters weren't allowed to be open. As they have reopened, people have said, for some of the content, the difference in the experience isn't enough to spend the time. We have talked about that a number of times, right, Avram?
Yep.
That the amount of money it costs to go to the theater for maybe a smaller project, or some things are meant for a big screen. And the first time you see them, they are intended to be on that screen. But there's a lot of stuff that's fine at home, especially if you've got a surround sound system and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, a good friend of mine. I'm looking chunky, even though I'm really not downloading anything. Uh, anyway, a good friend of mine has a incredible home theater setup in his house that he bought last year. He has set up. We were visiting him last week.
Nice.
He has set up a movie theater room in his house,
Okay.
and he went through the trouble of like doing everything to get this movie theater room right. So it's got like multiple levels, right? Where he's got like different seats on different levels. And the seats are like better than most movie theaters have. Although modern movie theaters, you get pretty nice seats now, but like these have like USB charging in them and all kinds of adjustment.
Nice.
He's got a projector, and he's got like a screen that comes like that is motorized and comes down.
Sure.
And it's like huge, not as big as the movie theater, but you're sitting pretty close, so you get a pretty good vantage point
scale
on his 4K projector, right?
Yeah.
He also has his projector supports 3D, so with active shutter. So he has bought like 5 or 6 pairs of active shutter glasses, so you can like some of his Blu-rays are actually 3D, and you can watch 3D movies on them. Sure. And then he also went to the effort of having
famously Avatar.
Who wants to watch Avatar when you could watch Treasure of the Four Crowns? We were there the other day when we were watching Treasure of the Four Crowns, which if you don't remember it, you're not alone. But there were 2 movies that came out in the early 80s. There was Coming at Ya and Treasure of the Four Crowns, which were like some of the best 3D movies ever made because they were made to be 3D, like to really stick it to you. So like there's all these scenes in the movie where people are just like poking at the screen or whatever, and like it just like something about the way they filmed it, it really looks like you're being poked in the face, like constantly. Like I wouldn't say that the movies like the quality of the plot is very good or anything, but wow, you're getting your 3D out of it like nothing else.
Sure.
Anyway, so people can create scenarios like that. I mean, granted, he probably had to spend a lot of money on this. Like he got the walls painted a particular color so they look like a Art Deco movie theater color, and he's got like a carpet in there that looks like an old movie theater, and he's got sconces on the wall that are like these Art Deco lights or whatever. Like and he's got an old-fashioned popcorn machine. So like he really tried. He really, really, really tried. But you could still have a pretty good experience without really trying, trying that hard. So, I mean, the other thing that is kind of killing it for the theater is the release window, right?
Yep.
So I was feeling a little bad because my family and I did not get to go see. We really wanted to go see the new Thor, the latest. I shouldn't even say new anymore, right? The latest Thor movie, and in the theater. But today, my wife came and told me that it's going to be on Disney Plus in like a few days. So, what did we have to wait? A month and a half?
Right.
Yeah, I'll take waiting a month and a half. Month and a half. I don't have to spend any money to see it because I already have Disney Plus.
Yeah.
The quality. I mean, if I had a better home theater system than I do, it would certainly be more movie theater like. So. Yeah, I mean it's getting harder and harder for them to justify their existence, and then people like even before there were some people who, I mean, obviously now public opinion seems to have shifted, and that a lot of people are not as concerned as they were about getting COVID. Like personally, I'm not too eager to go to the movie theater and take any kind of risk just to see a movie, but there's a lot of people who probably, based on my seeing how many people are wearing masks in public, probably not that many people, probably a lot of people not deterred by the risk of being around other people as much as they're deterred by the lack of motivation. Like, okay, so it's movies cost more and more. It's like $15 to see a movie,
Yeah.
um, for a single ticket around here. So you're gonna pay for your movie tickets. A family of four, that's like $60 before you buy any food. Like, that's that's no joke. That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
It's a lot of money for what? And if you're going out if you're parents and you're going out without the kids and you need a babysitter, like,
Right.
think
Right.
about now. Listen, it was an experience, right? To go out and actually leave the house, and that was
Sure.
something to do when you went out. But and so that's sad, in a way. I'd like the movie theaters to still be there, uh, when I'm ready to go back to one. But and there are certain things where it sort of feels like this would be a cool thing to do, to go see in the movie theater. Like, just last night, here's a little pitch for folks who have Paramount Plus. Uh, I watched the new 4K cut of Star Trek One, which is not a great movie, but the new 4K director's cut, it looks good, like, looks really good, right? And I was watching it on my 50-inch TV,
Hmm.
and I was thinking, like, this actually, like, if I was at a movie theater with like a really nice screen, this would be a nice experience.
Yeah.
And that's going off of that's a limited time thing too. It's going to be off Paramount Plus on the 31st.
Oh,
So
really?
you have 10 days to watch it, to watch Star Trek the motion picture. They have like a non-director's cut version that's on there always, but this is like the new 4K remaster, whatever
Got it.
version. So anyway, yeah, some things would look really nice on a bigger screen, but it's really hard to justify. Um, it's really hard to justify, and most things don't really benefit from you going to the movie theater, and it's not
Right.
worth the cost. So,
Exactly.
I mean,
And
now there's a lot they could do to improve.
we've talked about what the future of theaters might look like. We've talked about, the Cineplex might end up being a thing of the past. We might go back to the movie palace kind of concept of a couple of screens instead of 28 or 40 in some places. And you're right. There are things in the experience that they could improve. They started
I
to
mean,
do some of that before things got weird, right? With the chair improvements and more interesting experiences like Look Theaters or Studio Movie Grill, things like that. And we're starting to see more and more of that. But yeah, what enhancements are in your head?
well, I think making it cheaper would be one.
Sure.
Like, I mean,
Interesting.
that seems counterintuitive.
This
Yeah.
was this was one of the companies that when all of the Movie Pass stuff was happening, they implemented their own version of it within the Cinemark brands, like Regal here in the United States, for unlimited movies for whatever it was a month. I don't know if it still exists. It may or may not.
I mean, that's something. I mean, I think, considering how many ads you have to see before a movie comes on,
Uh
like,
huh.
maybe they should do something, have some type of, like, we see other streaming going to ad models. Why
Hmm.
can't the theater go to an ad model? I mean, is that just too out of whack to say, like, we're going to show you
Fascinating idea.
commercials during your movie, and you either get it much cheaper or free? Like,
Hmm.
I don't know. I'm just thinking, like, $15 to see a movie is a lot of money, and, like,
Yeah.
frankly, considering how much they make from concessions, they probably could get people in the door, like, saying,
True.
we're going to show you a movie free with ads, and then good make some good money on selling popcorn.
True.
Like, I mean, I don't know. Maybe they've done the math and this doesn't work, but at the same time, people are going to the movie theater, so maybe they should try something else.
Right.
Uh,
My suspicion is that we're going to see some creativity in the theater experience. My suspicion is that Cinemark, Regal, uh, Yes Planet are not, what a weird name, are not likely to vanish entirely. Now, Cinemark might divest itself of a couple of the brands, maybe some of the smaller ones. But my guess is that they're looking to restructure their debt, of which there is 4.8 billion US dollars. And that's where the bankruptcy is coming in. My guess is that it's going to be a restructuring. And out of it will come some theatrical creativity. AMC, as we talked about when all of the weird meme stuff was happening on Reddit, AMC ended up turning that in their advantage, right? There was a bunch of short selling. People bought the stock to make it go up to screw the short sellers, and then AMC saw it and they sold some of their own stock back into the market when they were about 3 weeks away from running out of cash for operations, and they've been riding that high ever since. So they played a game and they won. But like Cinemark, I suspect we're going to see some theatrical creativity come out of this.
Well, I hope they don't shut down, because there's a Regal that opened in my town, like a year or two before the pandemic. Sadly, they built a brand new fancy Regal multiplex. It's like walking distance from my house, and I've used it like one or two times, and I'd really like it to stay in business.
Sure.
So, I mean, because it would be cool to be able to go there. Now, I have to admit, have I been going there? Not since the pandemic, but a few weeks before, I took my son to see Sonic there, and we had the first Sonic 1, and we had a great time. Guess what happened with Sonic 2 though? Like 2 months after it came out in the theater, we were able to see it.
Yep.
To see it on streaming. So I'm not sure what the answer is. Maybe it's more events and birthday parties. I know a lot of kids who have birthday parties at the movie theater, who rent a theater for birth, and that's a great use of it.
Yeah, it is.
But obviously, there's only so much of that they can do.
Yeah.
The other thing I think is really cool, but no multiplex is really set up to do. To your point about Movie Palace, is just doing revivals and showing old movies in a way that like you wouldn't normally. So like the movie theater I used to go to as a kid was built, or one of the ones I used to go as a kid was built in 1926. Oh, wow. And it's one of the few theaters from that era that still exists. Like somebody bought it and they they refurbished it to a point. And it shows movies.
Proper maintenance kind of refurbishment, not we're going to tear it out and make it modern.
They didn't change the chairs. Yeah.
Oh, God.
Yes, but what I mean is they didn't change the chairs. So like they did like the ceiling, which is like beautiful. This beautiful, gorgeous ceiling is still in okay shape. But they didn't really improve the screen. They didn't improve the seats. So I wish they had sort of put some modern amenities. They didn't clean the bathroom. It looks like it hasn't been cleaned since 1926. But I took Isaac my son to see a movie there like a few years ago, and I was like, "Hey, isn't this cool? You're going to see a movie in the same theater I saw it in." Whatever. And the thing is, though, what's really cool when they do it there is that sometimes on Saturdays they will play silent movies, and they'll have an organist come, and they have a real organ, and they'll do the organ.
Oh,
right. So that to me is like a great.
For those who don't know, because we do have a big percentage of our audience that's very young, you may not know that we talk about silent films, and when you see them most of the time, there's a soundtrack on them. That soundtrack was played live in theaters in those days, on a piano or an organ or something in the theater, which is an experience that's totally dead. I mean, unless you go see Rocky Horror, there's nothing that's happening in the theater while the thing is happening. Right.
So that's a great use of the movie theater. Rocky Horror is a great use of the movie theater. I don't know how many are still doing it, but
I know we've got one. I think there's one on St. Pete Beach in our area that still does it. every weekend.
I myself would love to go see Rocky Horror in the theater again. It's been a while, but I've been many times, several times, and would love to go again. So, like, yeah, you could find uses to sort of combine sort of live performance with the theater. There's ways of making it more interesting.
Yeah, for sure, and putting the space to use during slow times. We've got. I keep mentioning Look Theaters. I know most people are probably not familiar with them. They're like a studio movie grill, but I think they're a smaller company. And we've got one here in our area, and they're not afraid to try stuff. In fact, we've had conversations about possibly holding parts of gaming tournaments in their theaters because they're legitimately not afraid to just try stuff, which I think is a cool thing, right? And I think we're going to see more of that trying interesting and weird stuff in movie theaters over probably the next year. This stuff getting started, likely in Regals, and then once AMC runs out of their bonus cash, maybe we'll see AMC start doing some stuff as well. Well, that is our show. Thank you to those of you who joined us live. We always appreciate it. If you didn't join us live and would like to in the future, Sunday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern, you can go to f5live.tv/join us, chat with us in the studio, occasionally be accosted by spam bots, which is what's been happening tonight. But once again, I will say Nightbot is the live streamer's best friend. So I didn't have to do any work. That thing took care of all of the bots. If you can't join us live, that's okay. PLUGHITZlive.com/subscribe. All of our shows are there, as well as links to all of the different ways that you can watch, listen, and follow along. I think that's going to do it for us tonight. So on behalf of the staff that's not here, I'm Scott.
I'm Avram.
And we'll see you back next time. Ciao.